Well, another Conservative criticising reform today is Kemi Badenoch, the Business Secretary and Women and Equalities Minister. Speaking to the Times political editor Stephen Swinford, she says voters should see through Nigel Farage. She's also taken aim at the actor David Tennant. Well, Kemi Badenoch is currently the bookmakers' favourite to become the next Conservative leader. Let's get a bit of an insight into her philosophy, her approach to politics with Mercy Muroki, her former advisor. Morning to you.
Good morning and happy birthday to you, Times Dear.
That's very kind. Thank you so much. Let's begin by talking about the comments made by Kemi Badenoch in the Times today, particularly in reference to reform voters, of which she says some of them are her friends. She says they're good people, but they don't realise what or indeed who they are voting for. Do you agree with that?
I do, and I have people in my life who are voting for reform as well, friends and colleagues, and they are polling about 20% in the polls right now. So, of course, 20% of the country, that's going to be represent a huge range of views. Okay, they're voting for a party that's arguably the most right-wing party at the moment, but it will represent a broad range of people voting for reform for a variety of reasons. But I have been very disappointed with the way some of their campaign and their candidates have the colours they've shown themselves to have at the moment. Yes, I understand the comments that we saw a couple of days ago was from a volunteer rather than sort of a candidate that's officially affiliated with the party. However, what worried me was the fact he was able to make those comments, call the Prime Minister the P word, say that migrants should be target practice. He felt he could express those quite openly in the safety of other reform campaigners. And so that sort of speaks to a culture, perhaps, that's festering amongst the reform campaign on the front line. And I didn't feel that Nigel Farage was strong enough in his condemnation about that. And so I would hope that if he is elected, and there's a good chance that he will be, that he distances himself entirely with people who hold those sorts of views.
I just wonder, by Kemi Badenoch coming out and saying, people who vote Reform UK are good people, but they don't realise what or who they're voting for. I just wonder if that could sometimes be construed as patronising or condescending, that, us politicians, we know better and you voters don't really understand. We have had some listeners getting in touch today saying, hang on a minute, don't tell me I don't know who I'm voting for and why. I know exactly what I'm voting for and I want to vote for Reform UK.
Yeah, I mean, on one hand, look, reform didn't exist a couple of years ago. And, yes, they have a manifesto, but they don't have necessarily a political record that we can scrutinise. And we don't know, we don't know, none of us know what they're going to, or what Nigel Farage and reform is going to stand for once they get elected. But I actually sympathise with people who feel disaffected, who feel disillusioned at the moment. Trust in politicians is at its lowest ever. So I do understand that the reasons people I know have given for voting reform is that they don't trust anybody else who they consider the sort of establishment politicians. And so I do think many people know what they're voting for. I think others are kind of pinning their hopes on Nigel Farage as the person who will sort of come in and overhaul everything bad about politics and represent a fresh start. I'm not sure he will be that. However, I do think all politicians actually should, take heed and really scrutinise themselves and say, why have we lost all these voters? Why are all these voters now flocking to this party? And, look at themselves in the mirror and perhaps change how they're doing things.
Another comment that Kemi Badenoch made in the course of this interview on the front page of the Times today was regarding David Tennant. He obviously said some very rude things about Kemi Badenoch earlier this week whilst collecting an award at an awards ceremony. I'm just wondering, by Kemi Badenoch responding today and accusing David Tennant of being a misogynist, whether this is helpful in what has already got a backdated history of being quite a toxic debate.
Yeah, well, what's toxic, I think, is when a woman or indeed a man expresses concerns about the conflicts that exist between trans rights and women's rights and whether women are being safeguarded enough. When somebody expresses that and then a celebrity tells them to shut up about it, I think that is very toxic, actually. David Tennant is obviously a very wealthy man. He's a celebrity, he has a huge platform. There are lots of women up and down the country, lots of men up and down the country who have nowhere near as much wealth, nowhere near as much power, who are concerned about whether there are enough protections in place, who are concerned about the conflicts that absolutely exist between trans rights and women's rights. And when celebrities tell people who have those views to shut up, it has a chilling effect. It says, actually, we don't care about the conflicts. We don't care about the fact that people want to make sure women's rights are absolutely protected. So I do think it's very toxic for David Tennant to be saying that, actually. And what Kemi has said in this article is that actually it doesn't matter whether it's misogyny or not. And actually, it would be just as bad if he was telling a man raising these concerns to shut up, because these are absolutely issues we need to be discussing.
We mentioned earlier on that Kemi Badenoch is the bookmakers' favourite to become the next Conservative Party leader if the Conservative Party are no longer the government come Friday of next week. Do you believe that Kemi Badenoch wants to be leader and indeed will be leader?
Well, I think that if we look at how a Conservative leader is elected, it's up to Conservative Party members ultimately, after the parliamentary party has shortlisted candidates. And she's the most popular sort of cabinet minister amongst the Conservative Party members. I think the last poll was done in April by a Conservative Home, and it found she had the highest net satisfaction rating. So I think, she's a politician. She came into politics because she wants to make a difference. She's not somebody with a background, traditionally political background. She didn't go to Oxford. She grew up. She grew up for most of her childhood abroad in Nigeria. So she's come into politics because she truly loves this country. She wants to make a difference. And if the party members are telling her, you're the person we want to sort of represent us, then of course that's something she will have to strongly take into consideration. And I think actually she's one of the few Conservatives who do unashamedly stand up for small c Conservative values. And I think that's what the people who support her really admire in her.
Really good to speak to you this morning. Thank you for your time, Mercy.